Okay, welcome to tonight's Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting. We're meeting tonight, October 9th, 2018, on Tuesday in the Westborough Fire Station. We will open the meeting tonight with this call to order. Then we will have an agenda review, which I'm doing right now, and we have an open forum tonight, and we have speakers for our open forum tonight. We'll then move to the review and approval of past minutes from October 4th, 2018, followed by a presentation by Youth and Family Services, new director Kara Presley and Judith Tully. And then we will move on to the committee's final warrant article review and finalization of our AFC R&R booklet for a town meeting on October 15th. We'll take a quick look at future draft agendas and then gather any liaison reports, comments, or concerns from committee members, and any public reminders we have, and then we will adjourn. So with that, we will move to the open forum. And tonight, following up on the planning articles that were presented to us by Planning Board Chair Silverberg and Town Planner Robbins, we have our Town Assessor here tonight to answer questions the committee had. Mr. Steinberg and Mr. Robbins, our Town Planner, is back again. So if you have something you want to open with questions from the committee, or do you have
if I could just
comments?
make a statement, if you don't mind.
Sure, Mr. Steinberg.
John Steinberg, Chief Assessor for the town. So I was asked initially on Friday about economic impact relative to the zoning change and the expansion from 4 to 6 stories, at which point, being a numbers guy, I immediately set forth to do all sorts of analysis, studying the lot sizes and potential development and the 40 to 60 ratio, and what's currently there, what's potentially there, open space, parking, you name it. And I finished all that, and I said, well, that just doesn't look right. Why is that? And I started thinking and doing some other research about and thoughts about what's the reason. What type of opportunities are we missing? And I get this a lot in my office, not just from existing taxpayers that own property, the commercial land, but I see it elsewhere. And the opportunities, and this is not pro or con, this is just what I see in my office. I couldn't tell you point one about the expense side of this relationship. All I can tell you is about the revenue side. Is the opportunities with especially the bigger parcels are related to corporate campuses and larger single tenant developments. Okay, businesses that want to have their own office building. Some of it's for security, biotech. They want to have their own building with room to expand. Some of it is a large corporation that's looking to relocate, like Amazon's project. When they do that, they look at what they're allowed to do by right. They don't care about special permits. They have a design often already designed as here's what our corporate campus is going to look like. And a lot of them, you'd be amazed how many are 4 stories, partially. They often have a flagship like AstraZeneca did that might go up to 6 stories. A lot of them oftentimes have architectural features that go up above 4 stories. Some have 5 stories plus some sort of design criteria that they want to look because it's been designed by some sort of architect. Others sometimes want to do solar panels. Facebook has a large park on top of their corporate offices. It's 4 stories in a lot of areas, but it's got this huge park. So those types of restrictions, when they see that and they see the term special permit, they just move on. And oftentimes, as I said, I think that when you do look at a lot of these, some of the buildings exceed 4 stories, but not all. So that sort of was one of the areas that I saw where my analysis was taking me in the wrong direction. The other thing is the hotel industry. If you look at the 2 new hotels in Marlborough, okay, there's 3 new hotels. There's a Hyatt, there's a Hilton Garden Inn, and there's a Fairfield Inn and Suites. All of them exceed 4 stories. The higher end hotels want to use their first floor for conference room, meeting room, restaurants. Okay, they don't want necessarily to have their rooms, they want their rooms to be up. And hotels are good for business. They're good for restaurant meals tax, they're good for hotel room tax. So for my business, which is revenue, hotels are good. That doesn't mean they don't come with economic impact. Of course they do. That's not my side of the equation. But that's one of the areas where they don't even consider that. They say, well, we need to do this. Here's our design, here's our formula, that's what we want to do. And they can often make use of smaller lots. They don't need 30 acres to do a development. And so that was another area that sort of just doing the analysis doesn't necessarily represent what the potential for economic revenue would be from this type of thing. But the thing that I can tell you, and I can tell you this even given some other areas of town, is that when people come to the EDC or they contact us looking for land, if they can't do it by right, you don't even get to the point where you're in negotiations or talking about potential opportunities. And that's one of the struggles with the zoning, in any zoning. Because of course zoning is a significant area that a town can control its growth, is how they dictate by zoning where things go and what they can allow. But I just wanted to come and speak a little bit about what I can answer and where I see the opportunities that aren't coming here and where they're going, because I don't know that that is really seen as much as picturing this giant monolith monstrosity that's there. Now there's lots of land within this area that's smaller that aren't AstraZeneca, okay? But I just wanted to convey sort of what I see out there in the world and what some of the hindrances are. The Apex Center in Marlborough, for example, they're doing the main entertainment building, I believe is 4 stories, but then they have this architectural feature where the signage is in the front that exceeds the 4 stories. They're doing a 3-story, 75,000 square foot office building, and then next to it they're doing a 5,000 square foot office building. A 5-story office building. So that's the type of mixed development that as an assessor I see out there. So I just wanted to come speak a little bit about that, just so you can see from a revenue standpoint what I see. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Did you have any more, Mr. Robbins, that you wanted to
Yes,
talk
but I don't
about?
know if you want to address it first.
Sure. Questions for our town assessor, Mr. Steinberg? Yes, Andrew?
I heard you talk about some of the types of opportunities that you think would be bypassed. Can you talk about any of the opportunities that literally have been presented, realizing they didn't go to the next stage? But can you speak to the volume of opportunities that you know have been turned away?
I can't speak specifically to the companies, but I can say in the 2 years that I've been chief assessor, I can think of 3 offhand that they start, and oftentimes it's not even the company itself. They have people who go find them land and present it to them. Yep. But I could think of 3 offhand that were potential developments. I know of 2 that went elsewhere in this state.
And would you classify those as office parks or hotels, or would you not know?
Those were both office,
Okay.
single tenant office, that wanted to build their own campus type of property. That was
I just have a
Okay.
comment.
Oh, yeah, Jim, Mr. Driscoll. Yep.
Just like the committee to remember, the assessor is saying this is just the revenue side, nothing to do with infrastructure or expenses.
Or residential property impact. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, and I have a list of questions, but I can hold them until we hear the rest of what you have to offer.
So it's
on the
actually a
article.
good segue if it's my turn.
Okay.
So through you, Madam Chairman. John mentioned some opportunities that were passed up. So one specifically that was passed up on West Park Drive because they wanted a building taller than 4 stories was TJ Maxx. And I don't know if you all remember that. That was about 3 years ago.
And
They
where was the location?
on West Park Drive, the first lot on the left, which is 800 West Park Drive. They were going to go to the first lot on the top of the hill because they wanted a visible location. And they left and went to Marlborough. They were moving from Framingham, looking for a new corporate headquarters. And they actually had a small announcement on the Westborough site, headed up by Cruth Capital. Many of the town officials were there. It was about 3 years ago. And because they were concerned about the permitting length of process, so this addresses just specifically special permit versus site plan review, because currently on the east side of town, West Park Drive and Research Drive, that area already allows 6-story buildings. they allow them through special permit. But they didn't want to wait. Marlborough could allow them to come by right through the special permit process. Now, I think it's real important that the board understand the difference between site plan review and special permit. The review is no less rigorous. The difference is the time. So for site plan review, the selectmen in this town do the review with staff as support. For special permit, the planning board does the review and staff reports to the planning board. Public hearing, generally a 90-day plan review, and another 30 days after the public hearing is closed for a final permit. For site plan review, there's again a public hearing. So if you as a resident were concerned about something anywhere in town, you could come and testify at that public hearing. If you wanted a traffic consultant, the site plan review requires a traffic consultant, same as the special permit. The difference is 45 days to report to the selectmen before they open the hearing. The planning board has 90 days before they open the public hearing, and by law they have 90 days after the close of the public hearing. So it's about the timeline. It's not the level of review, it's just a streamlined process. That's the difference between site plan review and special permit.
Is that the only difference? If you go to 6 stories, you can't reject their 6-story proposal.
Also,
right?
so yeah, if I can continue.
Excuse me, Mr.
Also,
Yep.
for site plan review, if you meet the minimum requirements, then your plan can't be turned down. Under a special permit, the language says that a special permit shall normally be granted unless there's something peculiar about the particular proposal that is not common to similar uses in the same district. So to state that in a real-world example, if I have a car dealership and I want to locate on Route 9 and I require a special permit, Route 9 is loaded with car dealerships. It's highly unlikely that I'll get denied, unless I'm in a very bad location and the traffic won't work. So now, talk about mitigation. The hotel that's at the intersection of Connector Road and Research Drive, there's a traffic light there. Some people complain about the traffic coming out of Research Drive because they get stopped at that during the day. If any of you work on Research Drive or West Park Drive, you know what I'm talking about, Freiburg Parkway. That's where the Piccadilly Pub used to be. I think it's J.J. O'Rourke's now. Is that the name of it?
O'Malley's, right.
Yeah, you all know what I'm talking about.
I have been
Extended
there, yep.
Stay America, and now the Wyndham's, not Wyndham. Hampton Inn and Suites. Hampton Inn and Suites, they're so close. They were required to install that traffic light. They were required to create the turning lanes. They were required to do the timing of the signals. That was all mitigation paid for out of the pocket of the private developer, not out of the pocket of the town. So in the future, whether there's a 6-story building as opposed to a 4-story building on the east side of town or on the west side of town, because by the way, you can build a 4-story building on the west side of town right now by right. No special permit required. By right, site plan review only. So what we're proposing is you can go from 4 to 6, also by right. The difference is 2 stories. So back to the hotel analogy, they required both special permit and site plan review. They had a traffic consultant, which is what recommended the installation of the traffic light, and also a phasing of the project. That all came through planning board and the board of selectmen. The same treatment would occur for a similar development on the west side of town. Nowhere on the east or the west do we have any 6-story buildings, but John mentioned 2 that he knew of that left to go somewhere else. And I gave you a concrete example of a company you already know really well, TJ Maxx. All we're doing is we're proposing that you allow 6-story buildings by right on both the east and the west side of town. Currently 4 stories is allowed by right.
Are you ready for questions, or did you?
Yeah, I'm ready for questions.
I went for a drive this weekend, and I thought there were 6-story buildings out along Route 9 in that industrially zoned area. That the
You mean on the east side of town?
BJ's, no, on the west side. BJ's is 6 stories, isn't it? Right before you go into the office park back there off
That's
of Route
west
9?
side. That's east side of town.
Right. So there are no 6 stories on the west side.
Correct.
So
Well,
I
there's
can.
8-story actually on the west side of town.
Well, it's Fountainhead. I was going to ask about Fountainhead, but is Fountainhead 8-story?
Yes. We checked that.
How
We both
tall?
confirmed that.
So you're going feet, right? I mean, a story used to be 8 or 10 feet, and now it's 15 feet. So
Well,
6 stories is how many
that's
feet?
correct.
6 stories is how many feet?
6 stories would be less than 90 feet.
90 feet. So, do you mind? Anybody else have questions? I mean, I sent you some questions in advance, which were, have you considered the traffic and view shed impacts on abutting properties in the neighborhood? If you go and look at where BJ sits off of Route 9, quarter mile, and absolutely no residential in sight, and nobody has to drive by that to get home except for the people who are already at work. Incredibly different scenario than the west side, which is nestled in among residential neighborhoods on every side of it. So if I drive down Smith Valve Parkway and see Selectron, which was the original Smith Valve, hard by Smith Valve Parkway, right and hard by our transit-oriented village, which is all residential, and clearly in the view shed, even coming across the lake, some of those properties are. And that goes to 90 feet from, what is it now, 30 feet? A blanket 90-foot height change strikes me as very insensitive to the site and very insensitive to the siting. So I don't know, but a part of me says if this is a value proposition and we need this to survive as a town, do I reject it out of hand? This just seems like such a blunt, drastic change that all of these parcels are allowed to go to 90 feet by right. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around, especially without visuals. I mean, it would be easy. When I look at AstraZeneca, I don't mind if AstraZeneca goes to 90 feet. It makes sense that that parcel goes to 90 feet. It's sitting out there, 100 feet from the road on its own parcel, all industrial on both sides of the road. But some of these others are nestled up against Lydia Pathway, backing onto the Fisher Street neighborhood, right up by our transit-oriented village. If you walk all of these parcels, there's a few of them that make great sense to let them go to 90 feet without impacting residential view sheds, lakeside view sheds. They're busy industrial streets already that could be fixed. But many of these are going to impact neighboring neighborhoods who know nothing about it. So if we move to who know nothing about it, like I'm a neighbor, and shame on me, I wasn't at the planning board meetings, but I'm a neighbor who's going to be impacted, and I didn't know about this. Anyway, I just have a lot of questions about whether we're ready to take this drastic a move in an industrial area that's nestled in the midst of residential neighborhoods. So anyway, that's where my questions go. Have you given this enough thought? Have you gone out and talked to impacted neighbors? What are the costs? You add several hundred workers. We're already learning from our fire and our police that we have visitor-driven costs in our police department, in our fire department, and in our roadways. That you add 500 new employees and we have to deal with the service costs. So, I mean, we're hearing this. I think we chase revenue without considering context or costs, and that's why I don't feel ready to support this article yet.
I concur. The biggest, I understand the revenue side. I do not know the impact of the community in terms of expense.
Jody?
Yes, Andrew. Yep. And then Gary. Yep.
In support of these questions, you seem to have chosen in amongst these parcels, not arbitrarily, obviously. There's some that are chosen, some that not. What was the determinant you used to make as to what would be included and what would not?
Okay, so I kind of want to respond to a couple of Jody's comments.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you look at your map, I have the map out in front of me. If anyone didn't bring theirs from last time, I have a few extras.
Okay.
So if anyone wants a map, just so you know what I'm looking at. You'll see that the crosshatched area, it's a yellow stripe on top of the purple. Those are all on the other side of the railroad tracks from the residential neighborhoods. You mentioned Fisher Street, you mentioned Edmund Brigham Way. It does not overlay the industrial properties that are right next to them. Currently, they have a buffer and they can build to 4 stories right now by right. And they don't. There's no 4-story buildings on any of those parcels. As a matter of fact, the tallest building in the neighborhood that abuts a residential property is the MBTA station.
So what would be the point? I don't understand the point. So they don't, they're allowed for 4 stories and they don't, so why do we allow for 6 stories there?
So we're not allowing it,
Okay.
Jody.
In which parcel are you looking at?
So
Can you give me the
only
parcel
the
number?
parcels that have numbers on them are the ones that would have the zoning overlay. The purple that has no number on it would not receive the overlay.
So
The
those-
yellow is residential.
But I see,
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gary, do you have a question?
well, no, I was just gonna, I mean, just to Jim, I mean, I see like parcel 26530, which only has a driveway, access on actual Fisher Street. They have enough frontage property to basically put in a driveway, but yet the land opens up behind. And, you know, if we plop a 90-foot building in there, you know, that's gonna be quite visible from Fisher Street, and it's gonna be quite visible from, the street, that are off, Milton, no, it's not Mill Road, what's the?
It's Maynard goes back there.
Maynard,
and
off of
Lydia
Maynard
Path.
Street also. That's gonna be you know, from that whole neighborhood, that Maynard intersection and everything like that, the Fisher Street along there, Maynard Street, you know, a 90-foot building on that parcel of land, I don't know, to me would be a little bit of an ugly eyesore. So, while I don't completely dismiss the concept of allowing 6-story buildings, I think maybe, you know, we maybe need to step back and review the parcels again. And think about what it's next. I mean, if somebody wants to build if they want to build this 10-story building down on AstraZeneca or down on Red Bavarian's old piece of property, right? And put up a big Hyatt or something along that nature. It's already down in an industrial zone that has transportation businesses, they're smaller stories, they're only 2 stories, but it's in a more industrial setting already, industrial commercial setting already. So if we did put up a 6-story building in that, you know, a hotel or a campus or something of that nature, an industrial campus, it wouldn't be that much of a visible eyesore, and for lack of a better term, I guess, than, you know, over on that particular parcel I pointed out before. And, you know, so I think, you know, like I said, I'm leaning to the fact where I don't mind the concept, and I understand the revenue side, and what John has said about it and everything, but I think we maybe need to take a breath and step back for a moment and just say, maybe we ought to reconsider a few of these parcels. Because if somebody wanted to come in and build a 4-story building on 265304, you probably wouldn't see it, because it would be shorter than the trees that are abutting the property and everything like that. So you could put, you know, in that parcel in there, you could put probably quite a good sized short campus, you know, not a 6-story one. So that, I mean, I guess that's kind of my comments on that. And then I had a comment back to John, or a question back to John. John, do you still prepare for the Board of Selectmen when they're doing a review on setting the tax rate, a report that shows various options available?
I do.
You do? Okay. They're showing that we could have a commercial industrial mix, or a try, even a buy or a try tax rate base.
Yeah, they have the option as to what percent they want to shift some of the tax burden from the residential properties to the commercial properties prior to the setting of the tax rate. And then based upon the final numbers, that's how the tax rate is.
And when do you typically have that report ready?
After the town meeting, we'll start to put together, we'll get I was actually going to mention, we have preliminary certification, so all of your preliminary assessments are up online if you want to review them. But because we're in a certification year, after town meeting, we'll continue down the process for our certification. It'll probably be the first meeting in November, hopefully, the Board of Selectmen.
I just wanted to bring that point up to let the rest of the board know that this document is produced every year, and it would provide, having a split tax rate would provide a revenue source to offset that transient cost to the town.
And that can be done in any year?
Every year.
Every year you have that option.
The classification hearing is held every year, and every year the Board of Selectmen have the option as to what percent they want to shift up to a certain percent.
So thinking about it, that, if, the police, the police chief, the fire chief determine that, okay, we have 18,000, 19,000 residents, permanent residents in town, but yet we're having 20,000 transient residents come in.
Or more, they said more than that.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we'll just use the figure 20,000 to make math a little bit easier to do. You could look at what type of burden or what type of costs are being put onto the town, additional costs being put onto the town by that burden of that industrial commercial complex that we're talking about building up, and be able to adjust the tax rate for commercial versus residential to potentially absorb some of that. I mean, a lot of other towns do that.
Yep.
And specifically for that reason. Do
you have another one?
Well, I still have some follow-up with John. John, I noticed that on our financial report that our town valuation went up by almost $220 million this year, between the annual town meeting and what's estimated to be reported at the for the tax rate purposes.
Yes?
Yep. Okay.
No, the answer is,
Yes.
being in a certification year, the projection that happens based upon, for the March town meeting being so early in the year,
Yeah.
is really prior to our analysis of the data and the sales. When we're in a certification year versus in interim, we adjust the value, let me back up, excuse me. We adjust the values every year, okay, based upon sales of the effective year. During these certification years, we break down the values in the tables to the very core and rebuild them from the ground up. And the state comes in, make sure we're doing our job accurately. And typically, if you look historically in those certification years, you see much larger jumps in value than you do in the interim years, because it goes into more detail, especially in the commercial properties. Because you don't have sales in commercial properties like you do residential properties to do the same type of analysis. So doing it on a 3-year, soon to be 5-year basis, it gives you more data to work with relative to what the going cap rates are, expenses, et cetera. So you do see a larger jump. So my preliminary estimates of valuation were low.
So did you say they're up 20 million this year in aggregate, or?
No,
it's the preliminary estimate for total value of the town is $4.095 billion. Did I get that?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, where I believe at the March town meeting it was $3 billion.
338.
Yeah,
So that's
3.875 billion.
Got it.
But it was also lower at last year's fall
Yes.
fall town meeting. Anyhow, I wanted to ask you about that, and you gave a great answer on that. The increase Was that primarily driven by the residential housing property increase? Because our residential property increased by 7.5%.
The residential market sales during the calendar 2017 were very strong.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the average single-family value went from 473 to 518, and that's the average single-family. And obviously, not all segments of the market moved the same. In prior years, there was a period where the high end was coming down when the low end was going up. So these averages are exactly that. That's the average single-family. Doesn't speak to condos or anything else, or large multifamily residential properties. But yeah, there is a significant growth in that. But commercial properties went up
So would
as
you
well.
say that most of the evaluation and most of the increase in the town's
I'd say
evaluation?
significant. I don't want to
Came-
say most because I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Okay,
So
well-
if you say so.
Would you say that
Significant.
most of that came from the increase in residential property
Our
value?
percentage, our
Right.
ratio is probably going to go down again.
The ratio, tell me.
Ratio of non-residential value to residential value.
Okay. All right, Gary, do you have more?
No, I'll yield.
You'll yield?
I'll yield for a moment,
Mr.
right?
Driscoll.
Gary,
yes.
you're going down the same road I really want to go down, but I think we're talking outside the warrant article that we're talking about now.
Okay,
I would love to have the assessor come back
when?
in our agenda for November 4th, is it?
Okay.
And I would like to know, you talk about the report. I would also like to know, what do we consider commercial? What do we consider industrial, personal property? Because if we start talking about dual tax rates, we also have to take into consideration mom and pop shops that are around town. I know people have always said with the commercial coming in, the mom and pops make out. I'm not sure if that's true or not true. So I would love to have you come back November 4th. And I would like to put together, see if the committee has some questions ahead of time.
Right.
And then, we can have a presentation or whatever. But I don't want to take up more time than the warrant article right now.
Okay.
As it stands.
Paul, you're the liaison to planning. Do you have questions or comments for us?
Not particular to that, but
Okay.
just, I have a specific question because it kind of came up here. How much flexibility do you have, the plan, Jim, in proposing or in the town voting for which parcels? Can you pick whatever ones you want here, or is there you need to make some
It's a really
general
good
criteria?
question. The town moderator has to allow any amendments to the motion.
But I mean,
To the warrant.
even if we were talking about, let's say it didn't happen and we were talking about next year and we're starting all over again, I don't think you can kind of cherry pick which parcels, or is that what we've done
We
already?
can, yes, we can. We
Okay.
just can't improve the value of one or two pieces because
Okay, so
that
as long
gives
as it's
them
not-
an unfair advantage. We call that spot zoning.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
And it gives them an unfair advantage to their neighbors. Their neighbors need to be entitled to the same privilege. Now, just on the concern for adjacent abutters, we notify immediately abutting property owners whenever there's a zoning change. So the neighbors on Gleason Street in yellow, the neighbors on the back of Fisher Street were notified of this. We did have a couple neighbors come. We had a lot of businesses come, of course, and testify in favor of it. It would be to their advantage. But we tried to be careful as to which parcels we chose, and we tried to maintain a buffer. With the cross-hatching on this map, it's sometimes difficult to see.
And the streets are not labeled. I would recommend
The
you
street
put street
names are not
labels
labeled.
next time you bring a map back to us.
That's a very good comment. I'll make a note of that
Okay.
and fix this map tomorrow for town meeting.
Yeah.
But as far as a traffic study, and I want you to know that Mark Silverberg and I talked about this after we left the meeting. We talked about it twice today, actually, and I talked to other members of the board, and I asked them if they felt that we needed to provide traffic numbers, because that seems to be a big question. And they felt that without knowing what a proposal would be, it would be unfair to estimate and try to justify our numbers if we chose every one of these parcels to be a 6-story building, because it would overinflate the traffic. It could be that some of these parcels would be 6 stories. Could be some of these would be 4, it could be some of these would be 2. So it's difficult to know, but that's the reason that I gave you the example of the hotel at the intersection of Connector Road and Freiburg Parkway, because in that case, they had a traffic study, and we required mitigation. It's going to be difficult to know what the mitigation is. For example, just with the transit-oriented village, you have 275 residential units, all condominiums or multifamily, and they were required to provide the light that you have currently at the intersection of Otis and Smith Parkway. That was entirely paid for by the developer. That same developer also fixed the intersection of Fisher and Maynard Street and Fisher and Mill Road. They realigned both of those intersections. So that's an example, again, of how the plan review makes mitigation a requirement. That's why the planning board feels that we can come up with a number now, but it's not going to affect the reality of a true proposal that comes in front of you. It may overinflate the number, it may underestimate the number, because we don't know what technology might be in 10 years. The proposal that came to us for Astra, they wanted 90 feet, not because they intended to put people on a 6th story. They intended to put machinery. They actually had a device that needed a 90-foot high clearance. That would be a 6-story building, but they had no intention of actually putting offices on a 6th story.
Yeah. And I've asked again, it's about the third time, some view shed analysis and some view shed examples and some view shed illustrations or a charrette from across the lake, from down the street, from Smithville Parkway. What does a 90-foot building look like when I'm driving by 90-foot, buildings to the right and the left on Smithville Parkway? When I get to the end and the right turn lane that was asked for mitigation and never built, so I wait in traffic to turn right to get to town. Those are the kinds of questions I'm asking. It's traffic and view shed.
Where was that? You asked
when you come down Smithville Parkway, coming up from Avalon or from around our residential neighborhood on Arch Street, and go, there's no turnout right-hand turn at the end. There's a third turning lane was asked for.
at the intersection.
At the intersection of Otis, and was never delivered. It was requested but not delivered in mitigation. So, yeah, we can ask for a lot. We don't always get it. Anyway, yeah, Jim, the other thing I'm looking at here
You
is
won't
this-
get a view shed analysis by town meeting.
No.
It's not possible.
But the other thing is this idea of corporate campuses and hotel industry coming in as an opportunity. Does the town feel like they want a giant corporate campus off Route 9 and Otis abutting residential neighborhoods? This area over here that a corporate campus could move into is already one of the most dangerous intersections in the state at Route 20 and Route 9. Why are these appropriate for corporate campuses and hotel industry? I don't know. And I might get there. The other thing that occurs to me is, could a developer buy up every single one of these parcels and pop a giant corporate campus right here by right? And does the town want that? I mean, we have another example of a developer buying up parcels and combining it into a much bigger development than we ever thought of by single lots. There's a lot to think through when you create this dramatic a change for the community's future. And like I said, I might get there. I'm just not there right now, given what I see so far.
I used to think that way until I realized that the money is the key to getting traffic improvements, and it's not coming from the state. So all those intersections that you have in town, even the Bay State light is paid for by private money. All the lights you have in town except for one are paid for by private money. So at the intersection of 9 and 20 in Northborough, by the way, that's not Westborough, that would actually push that intersection to require a light.
So you get a traffic light, but you also get permanent service needs.
I'm sorry?
You get a traffic light, one-time investment. You also get permanent service needs because of the increased transit population of using the town.
Yeah.
It's an interesting
and those
thing to
people
balance.
eat in town, spend money in town, and it is a trade-off. It's tough to look at those numbers.
And then it's hard to model what the net benefit is. Anyway, anything else on the? Yes, Paul. Yep.
I kind of cut you off. What did the neighbors, you said a few neighbors showed up to the public meeting, the planning board meeting, right? What, were they satisfied? I mean, I know you can't characterize them, but what did you feel after that?
We didn't have a lot of negative comments. Most people wanted to know exactly where the line was. They wanted to ask questions about the map. If anyone lives in this neighborhood, they're already used to living where there's a lot of industrial traffic or commuter traffic. So I think they expected larger buildings, but no change in their neighborhood. I mean, you could say the view will be different if there's a large building next to them, but when you buy next to an industrial property, you have to know what to expect. And we commonly field calls about light shining at night. We just talked to the people at DHL, which, by the way, DHL is actually that parcel that you pointed out, Gary. It's already developed. And the reason that a 9-story building probably can't go there is because where the number is and the property is all wet. In the future, there's already a plan for a subdivision there. Industrial subdivision's been approved, it was approved years ago, and they're gonna have to cut off, if they ever execute this plan, that part of the property and give it to the town. That was part of the approval. So, but that's more than you need to know. It's just, that's parcel specific, that's one particular development. So what I was gonna say is, people who buy next to an industrial use or an industrial zone district have to understand that they're gonna get truck traffic, they're gonna get commuter traffic.
Did you get people from the TOV?
From the TOV, I don't recall that I did.
Okay. Jim?
I was just going to say, the people who live near an industrial park may feel that way. But with the size of the buildings and the number of people coming in, not only is that industrial area affected, but it's a spider web that goes out throughout the whole community. Look at the town now.
I know this is an emotional thing.
Well,
it's very hard to sit here
it's a
and
big
not try and
change.
defend an idea and tell you what we've done.
It's a big change.
It's your vote, I
It's a
appreciate
big
that.
change. And, yes, Sean?
So, so you look at the Astra Pharmaceutical property, and I can't recall how long it's been dormant now. But really, I mean, it sounds like a big reason for this is that we're not getting legitimate offers on that property the way it's zoned currently, that sort of nothing's happening there. And if we don't do something, we aren't going to get anything for that. And I know for a long time, that particular property was a huge revenue boost for the town. And people were very disappointed when they left. So I think anything we can do to try and get something back in there kind of makes some sense to me.
Yeah, I also noticed, sorry,
No, okay, go ahead.
that the distribution center across the street that I always thought was very busy is gone. Moved to Shrewsbury, I think.
You're talking about Rand Whitney?
No, the one that's only truck bays around it. So I assume it's just
Off of
distribution.
Otis? Off of Otis.
The truck terminal station that was there?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Oh, by Coca-Cola?
Yeah, no, the one right across the street, so.
From Astor.
$700,000.
Yeah, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long that's been, but it was the first time I noticed it today was empty. That's not good, I think.
The owner's still paying taxes on the property, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something we need to learn in November. What's the difference between it being occupied and non-occupied?
Yeah, I mean, most of these properties, commercial properties where people move out, they still pay the taxes. It's just a matter of finding another tenant, or in that case, sometimes those properties have huge marketable value because people need a place to, leave and pick up and drop off their tractor trailers, which is essentially what they did there.
All right, that's a lot. Did you have any final comments?
No, I appreciate everyone's comments, and
no.
I'm not offended by it. As a matter of fact, I like these kind of, I call it devil's advocate approach, because I need to hear that.
How passionate is the planning board and your constituents, or you, in terms of thinking this is really a smart thing to be doing right now? Are you doing it in response to pressure on you, or are you doing it because you think this is a really terrific idea?
No, I mean, the board voted 5-0 to support it. So.
Yeah, Gary, yep.
But I will say this, of course, they were responding to an idea of a corporation that would do a great thing for this town. So,
And Gary had a comment, and then Andrew had a comment.
Well,
Yep.
I had a question for Jim, but totally unrelated to this topic.
So,
And that was, that I see we're having New Cumberland Farms going into town in the old Tufts building location. I mean, it's good that we got rid of the old Tufts building.
Very
That was an eyesore. Is that gonna be a mixed-use property?
no, unfortunately.
But I thought we had zoned that all for mixed use.
We did.
we zoned the TOV for mixed use too, and we never got commercial to move in.
You are getting commercial to move in.
Well, we're getting commercial, we're
The
getting
first lot's been
Cumberland
approved
Farms,
for
but-
commercial use. We have
What's coming in?
a tenant. It's a mixed use. It's a combination daycare and function facility.
It's not exactly what smart growth,
An
the
office,
picture's painted like smart growth. And an office?
an office going into the 1 Gleason Street, which is the little development that just began. That's 7,000 square feet of office. And just to elaborate on what Gary said, we were disappointed. We love Cumberland Farms. I think it's.
Well, they've been good to the
Great
town.
corporation.
They've been good for the town, good to Westborough for many, many years. We've had a good working relationship with Cumberland Farms for 30, maybe even 40 years now. And, you know, so they'd be a hard person to say no to.
And the owner of the property came to me one day and said they made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
So the other proposal went by the wayside.
Yeah.
And it's a use that's allowed in the downtown, so
Right.
can't turn it down.
And it did resolve our eyesore problem with Tufts Machine.
All right, at this point, I think it's time to close the open forum.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Longest
Thank you
open
very
forum
much.
ever.
I think it's an important thing for us to
Good.
consider. All right, thanks for coming again. Yep, thank you. And can you let us know if you can come back on November 5th?
Yeah, I was going to forward me some questions, and if anyone has that, I'm always there. So
Okay,
if my light is off, it doesn't mean I'm not there. Just say come on.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, all right, we can review minutes. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Can we approve the minutes?
We have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of October 4th, 2018.
Second.
And is there any discussion or comments? All in favor? 700. All right, now, Youth and Family Services, thank you for your patience.
I have 2 sets of handouts for you with the,
Yep, and if you could introduce
excuse
yourself.
me, of
right
course.
here. Yep.
Kara Presley. I am the new Director of Youth and Family Services for the town. I've been in my position for about 5 weeks now.
Welcome.
Very happy to be here.
And with you is Judith Tully, and your role, Judith?
I'm the chair of the Youth Commission, and I've been in that position for about 9 years now.
Thank you.
All right, so with the absence of a PowerPoint presentation, I have handouts.
Great.
Thank you.
You can take one and pass them, yeah?
Thank you.
I think I might ask you to give one of each to our town moderator.
Sure.
That's John Arnold.
Are there enough? Because I can look at that. Yeah, enough?
I'm gonna set 2 aside for the folks who are missing. Take one and pass the rest around.
All right, you have 2 documents in front of you. One is an overview, the presentation that I'll give, and the second one is a reference to the position which I'll describe, or to the proposal which I'll describe to you as I go. So just a little overview to start about Youth and Family Services. We have a mission to provide counseling and referral services for Westborough residents, children and families, to promote prevention and wellness through collaboration with town and community agencies, and to provide inclusive education and programming to enhance the lives of all families in Westborough. Towards that mission, we provide direct mental health services, case management, referrals, information, related usually to behavioral health and social services, prevention and education programming, and all types of community engagement. What we are looking to do with this proposal in the article is to specifically increase the hours for our administrative assistant from 19 hours a week to a full-time position of 40 hours a week. I am in agreement with the original proposal that was presented by my predecessor, John Badenhausen, and it was presented to the selectmen a couple of months ago, prior to my arrival. And his original request was to use requested funds to add to the salary line with the purpose of increasing the hours of this position. So we're requesting to increase wages, and we are requesting to change some of the duties, or rather add duties to the job description, which is why I've given to you a draft of the proposed job description. The job description won't be in the vote for town meeting, it's just the article requesting the funding. But for your purposes to understand it, I wanted you to be able to see that. And you'll also note, perhaps, that the original proposed article from John, my predecessor, had a different number. It was 23,000, I think, was the original proposal, and a few other dollars, and now it is the 18,075. That change came from some calculations that the assistant town manager did in conjunction with the finance director. I have just one example of where those numbers came from, but basically they just, when they crunched it down, the number just turned out to be different. And so John hadn't done that kind of crunching when the proposal came. So I can provide you the details of that information if you'd like. All right, so the role of the administrative assistant has fundamentally changed over the last 20 years, requiring additional duties, an increase in complexity of the position, and the intensity of the responsibilities, and a shifting focus of our department overall. As you can see on the 6th slide, 20 years ago when my predecessor first came to the position, the responsibilities of the administrative assistant easily fit within the 19-hour-a-week position. However, that has changed over time, and the administrative assistant's current responsibilities include all of those previous things, plus the items that I have listed on this slide. The department overall has just grown to rely on the administrative assistant in many ways, more than ever in the past, and that's due to the changing needs and the expectations that are presented to us by our clients and by our consultation with the community. Already, even in my short tenure, I can clearly see the ways that the administrative assistant requires significantly more time and already does and could add additional value to the department through the use of attention and skill that would be allowed to us to take advantage of with a full-time position. So just to elaborate a little bit about the expanding needs and the demand on the position, the administrative assistant, one important role that person has come to undertake is to triage the needs of the clients. The administrative assistant has always taken phone calls and pointed clients in the right direction or callers in the right direction, but that role has significantly intensified due to the increased behavioral health acuity of the people that are looking for services, and more complexity of cases that our counseling staff are seeing. So the counseling staff is taking on more of a load in the counseling arena, leaving less opportunity to spend time providing for the referral needs and the kind of everyday basic needs that some folks come to our department demanding. There's also been, because of demographic changes in Westborough, a growing diversity of language and culture. Because of that change, it does require more time and attention for us to be sensitive and responsive to those particular needs. And there is also in our community a scarcity of mental health services, particularly those that are low barrier, really long waiting lists. Of course, people are required to use their health insurance, and most people in Massachusetts do have health insurance, but sometimes the deductibles are astronomical or the co-pays are unwieldy for clients and families. And many of the private practitioners that practice here don't even take insurance, and their fees are too high. So it's high barriers, and we provide free services, and we don't usually have a wait list, so we can really meet people's needs. In the last, since the 90s, the early 90s, the population of Westborough has grown from 1990, 14,000 people then to over 19,000 now. There are now over 7,000 housing units compared to 5,700 back in 1990. A lot more of those are affordable housing units, which means there's a higher number of folks who do struggle socioeconomically and have needs compared to that. There are a whole lot more students. And just an example, the food pantry demand has expanded. So these are folks that are coming to us saying, we're struggling financially, we're struggling with food, and they need our help to refer to that. And our administrative assistant plays a huge role in not only helping point out people to different resources, but helping them access them and assisting with the facilitation. And by adding more time to this position and adding some more duties, it allows for us to prioritize the time spent with folks to connect them to the services they need. An increase in the administrative assistant's hours will allow Youth and Family Services to maintain our high quality and low barrier clinical services by ensuring that the counseling staff can focus on the clinical work and the delivery of programming, while the administrative assistant does some of the other stuff that the counselors used to do. It will allow us to review and update programs and processes to ensure efficiency and compliance with standards of care, which will require more time and skills by the administrative assistant, mostly because I'll be asking that person to do more work to help me assess the needs of the department. As I stated, it will allow us to prioritize the needs for referrals and information about resources. And it really allows us, because part of the additional role duties will be to be one of the main liaisons for a lot of community groups. It allows for relationship building with community groups and other town departments to a greater extent, which will just strengthen our ability to collaborate. And it just, in general, facilitates growth and expansion across all areas. We will have more capacity to do more programming. So in summary, by increasing the hours worked by the administrative assistant, Youth and Family Services will be able to offer this community resource specialist for residents, prioritize the development of referrals in a way that it's sort of gotten pushed to the side, and fulfill a range of administrative duties, ensuring no backlog, which admittedly we have a backlog of administrative tasks, and then facilitate the growth of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, questions from the committee? Yes.
So I had a question of kind of context, but I was able to find my budget to see that your budget is about, wage and salary budget is about 181,000 this year. So that's the context, it's whatever percent that is.
Right.
8% or something like
Yeah,
that.
I'm sorry, I don't have that.
And it has the list of the people and including the administrative assistants. So that was my big thing, is just the
Okay.
context of this as a kind of a proportion.
Oh, sure.
So you said it's about 8%?
Well, I just guessed that,
Okay.
18 out of 180, 100,
About 10.
yeah. 10.
But I guess to that point though, my question was gonna be, this is for just a half a year?
This is for the remainder of this year, so with the 2020 fiscal
Yeah.
year budget, I will incorporate this into that budget as
So
well.
what's half of a full year's salary?
Right.
What is, I mean,
Oh.
18,075 is half of 4-month salary? Because that's what's left in the fiscal year?
Yes.
So,
It's,
you're asking what's left
Right.
of an annual
So
salary?
suggest that a full year would be about 36.
Oh, June.
Más o menos, which mean if this is going from 19,
We're only in October.
It's 8 months, it's 8 months.
Eight
It's
months.
half of 8 months.
Okay,
for
so
the
it's 8
fiscal
months.
year.
Okay.
Half of 8
Yeah.
months, yeah.
okay.
But somewhere. in
Yeah, I
between.
think we're still pivoting on up to about a $60,000-ish position-ish. That when this goes from
When it's fully
19 to
loaded.
20.
right, when it's,
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so now it's like a 30, and you're gonna add another 30.
Well, actually,
Something
right now,
like that.
the hourly wage for this position is $28 an hour. So this number was figured with that
That's
wage
40 that's
continuing.
40,000 a year.
And then the, whatever other additional costs. So bear with me that I don't know all the ins and outs of the numbers, and I'm happy to get anything further that would be helpful, but I
Other questions?
don't have more.
Other questions, Sean? Yep.
So sort of your department in total, currently, you're the only full-time employee,
Yes,
correct?
I
And the
am.
rest of the department is made up of-
19 hours, 19-hour counselor, another 19-hour counselor, and a 19-hour administrative assistant.
And how long have the two counselors been there?
15 and 16 years.
15 and 16 years, terrific.
A long time.
Yes, Terry?
Does it include benefits?
This
It
number
doesn't.
does not.
Okay, so that, the town will absorb, this will go from 19 hours to a full-time position, so benefits will be a cost to the town. Okay?
Just I guess one more point of interest is
Yep.
that we were originally proposing to change the title of this position to Administrative Assistant and Community Resource Specialist. However, because it is a position that will become part of the clerical union, we needed to keep the title in alignment with the other positions across the town that have similar job descriptions.
Other questions? It would be helpful to me, and I'm going to support this because I just am, but I think it would be helpful for you to paint a picture for the town of who you're helping, who the families are that you're helping, who the kids are that you're helping, and what what improved level of service and help you're going to be able to provide if you have another half-time admin there. You
Okay.
need to paint that picture and make people feel the difference there.
Right, okay.
What's getting dropped now, who's not getting the services that Westborough has, committed itself to through Youth and Family Services, and how might the quality of that service and the ability to serve be enhanced
All right,
with this person.
that's totally doable, so I'll consider that.
Okay, anybody else? Great.
Anything to add, Judith?
Judith? It's really good to meet you.
Very nice
Thank
to meet
you.
all
Welcome
of
to
you.
town.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
be here.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you,
Have
Karen.
a good
Yeah.
evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here. I watch you all the time, and I'm at every town meeting, and I know you work hard.
That's a lot of work watching all of that footage, so thank you.
That vast viewing audience.
There she is.
Yeah, we met the viewer.
It helps you sleep,
You
right?
didn't know you had a fan base.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the warrant article review and the finalization of the R&R. So I see two articles here that we haven't voted on, is that correct? The two articles are Article 10, Youth and Family Services Budget, and Article 36.
Jody,
Yep.
there's also an article we have voted on that we got new information on.
Okay, oh, yes, Paul, can you share that before we, yes,
Okay.
please.
So you remember that we had asked what would the incremental cost would be to add spaces?
And the article number is it's the ADA parking spaces at the fields, right?
Right, for the.
And what is Article?
13.
13, okay, thanks. Okay, Article 13, yes.
So I'll just pretty much requote what Derek found and a small comment that he made. It would add, as we also discussed, Bowman made no sense to even think about because it's so small. And especially once we learned the 1 to 25 ratio type of thing. And he doesn't address the 1 to 25, 2 to 50 ratio, but apart from that, and we don't have time to get into that, I guess, but for more information on that from them. But for Rogers Field, it would add $4,000. So the original quote was $22,715.75. It would make it $26,715.75. And the Upper Haskell and the Hadley Field to add 2 additional spots would increase at $7,000, which would raise that from $22,000 to $29,000 and change on both of those. So the total article would increase $11,000 if we did all 3 of those, from 68, almost 69,000 to almost 80,000. And his concern is that I'm interpreting a little bit, mainly he said, I don't want to confuse the voters and lose the entire intent of the article, which I think I agree with that in a sense. And since we don't know the number of spaces, I don't think we should be adding spaces without knowing the proportions and what requirements are. On the other hand, the ADA is, or we're doing an ADA study, which would probably help determine those. You know, I think, so on one hand, I think we want to just get rolling on this. We know it's needed. We want to short circuit any kind of action that might be taken because we're not doing it. Most of the expenses on the trail, you know, the walkways to the parks as opposed to the space itself in each case. So on that one hand, the other hand, a wider study is being done that could impact this and say, well, we actually should have two. So it's kind of there's an either or there. For me, I certainly wouldn't vote for more to be spent, but I think it could be up for debate whether to wait, which I don't think I would do either, but I think that's a possibility because then you would be doing some change in the future.
Other comments on that? Yes, Gary?
Well, I think we heard from Christie. You know, I mean, she was pretty, or at least I thought that she was pretty clear that, you know, Bowman wouldn't require a second, you know, just on the size, you know, if you applied that 1 to 25 ratio, and that the other locations, you know, were certainly in compliance, or would be in compliance as composed. Yeah, you might be able to split the hairs on one of them, but I think that I tend to agree with Paul and say that, you know, we should just leave the article the way it is, let it go forward, let them do the initial work on the ADA compliance that they feel is necessary, and when we have the review, if they come back and say, you know, you really could use a second space at Rogers or at one of the other locations, then we'll just deal with it then.
What we don't know is really what the fixed cost component of this is. So it's $4,000 to add it now, but would it be, you know, $24,000 later? But since we don't have that, I don't think we can make that assumption. And, you know, I agree.
Yeah. I am, the timing, I'm a little itchy about the timing to do the ADA work now and authorize a townwide ADA study at the same time. Were we told why it's important to do this now before the results of the townwide ADA study come back?
I think they were done independently, the two thoughts.
He did mention that we now have an ADA policy of some sort in town, right? And so the fact that this isn't compliant and we have a policy, he thought it made sense for us to go ahead and do it now.
A policy and a methodology of getting the complaints back. Because the question was asked, what would happen if we don't do it right now? And I believe Beth's answer was, we'd get sued.
Yeah,
And I realize it's a generic risk, but...
Right.
And my concern about thinking, and I think this is all very valid, Beth is the one dissenting vote on this. And unfortunately, she's not here to see this. And I don't know if she would feel we would need to revote this like on the floor because she's not here. But that doesn't change the fact we should have had this conversation. It's just that we've already voted it because it's the way it was written as the right thing to do. But we may face the concern of having to re-vote it on the floor because if Beth wants to change her mind.
I don't feel like I don't, everyone needs to speak to themselves, I don't feel like I've been persuaded that we need to change our vote or change the proposal that came forward in the warrant article. I don't know if anybody, and we don't have the data to make that informed. The only way I'd change my vote is if the committee felt that it was wise to pass over this and revisit it when the townwide ADA analysis is in. But I don't know that we feel strongly about turning this warrant article back.
And I don't think my concern, just to be clear, was stated because I felt anybody of us wanted to change it. I just don't know if Beth would want to change it. Unfortunately, she's not here to hear the difference, so.
She might want to make a unanimous vote instead of, even if we all don't change.
And the and the Board of Selectmen supported it unanimously as well. So if no one's going to make a motion to change or reconsider our vote, I think we can move on. Anybody still wavering?
Just
Yep,
a
Terry?
bit of clarification, leaving it as it is.
Yeah.
But what the timeline is on each of these two pieces of work as against when there'd be at least a draft of the evaluation. In other words, we can leave it the way it is. If time works on our side, we may be able to vote for an amendment if it says, look, you're going to need two, and then we can just proceed if we're okay.
On the, I don't know that we're gonna have more data before town meeting. Do
No,
you need
no.
to make new motions on the town meeting
No,
floor?
I'm saying send this one through the way it is, and if circumstances change, go for an amendment later.
They can, well, this was another question, you more experienced than I. Once we appropriate, essentially town meeting sort of appropriates this funding, can they wait and harmonize their work with Article
Oh, yeah, they don't.
12
They don't necessarily have to go out and spend the money.
before the ADA
Yeah.
is done?
So then we might,
So that's a problem they can solve
Right.
between the assistant town manager, or acting town manager, who's heading up the ADA self-evaluation, and Derek, who's
Yeah, I don't remember
conservation.
them saying whether they were trying to get it done in the fall or, because if it's the fall, I would think they wouldn't have that report, but maybe by the spring they would. That ADA study.
This might come up for them on town meeting floor. If 9 of us are asking this question, town meeting may ask some of these questions as well.
I think it would probably roll through compared to other things, like if that issue hadn't been raised, to spend more than what was that. But I don't know, we'll see. Maybe Beth will raise it.
Okay.
Well, it was Beth that raised the issue of adding more spaces. She's the one that said, well, if we have one space, do we really need two? If we have two, do we really need four?
And then Hank brought up the point, is does this bring us into compliance? And Derek said, the proponent said, yes, we think this brings us into compliance with ADA.
And I
And
think-
I said, why are we making policy and program decisions for someone who's bringing us into compliance with ADA? So, I don't know, this one's been an interesting go-around.
And then Chrissy kind of backed it up that, with her comments on what compliance would look like.
Okay, I'm comfortable leaving it. Yeah, is that a consensus here? Okay, good. Then we should look at, I guess should we just go in order here? Article 10, Youth and Family Services. Discussion on the committee about the Youth and Family Services budget proposal here. Do we want a motion and then discussion, or discussion and then a motion?
Motion first, discussion second.
Okay, go ahead. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we recommend that the town so vote.
There's a second from Mr. McGoldrick. So, discussion.
no, I think well put together, and it's part of being here and services we provide.
I have some misgivings of the fact that this hides the fact that it's actually a much bigger ask, or a significantly bigger ask, when we do the full town meeting. But even at that significant ask, it's a position, a service of need that this town would benefit from, and I would support that.
When you annualize it and benefit it, it's gonna be a bigger number.
Yeah, but, yes, that being my concern, it's just, this I don't think is a fair representation of what the town will be bearing eventually. But
And we raised that tonight, so the director would have the opportunity to disclose that in her presentation on town meeting floor. Other discussion? Okay,
Just one other comment. So in sort of reaching out and things, and I went to their website, and they also did a service needs study in 2016. And where they go out to the community, and they got tremendous feedback. I mean, I think everybody I've spoken to, they can't say enough about youth and family services.
okay, positively, supportively,
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. They do a terrific job. And as far as I know, this is their first increase in,
Years.
I mean, she mentioned those two counselors have been there 15 and 16 years, probably since those additions, and they're both part-time, so.
Other comments?
It's been a seriously neglected department.
Yep, I know.
Well, that being said, she also said they don't have a backlog, which means that whilst I respect everything that's being said here, they're clearly not being inundated in a way that's
Right.
keeping their counselors overbooked. that was one of the little notes that I heard that slipped in there, so.
Yep. Other comments, discussion? All right, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of Article 10, Youth and Family Services budget increase? This is a 700. All right. Article 36, to amend the zoning bylaws to, looks like increase the height restrictions, to me, to 90 feet in all of the purple hashtag numbered lots on the zoning map that was shown to us. Do we have a motion?
Well, I'll make the motion that recommends the town so vote.
Okay. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, do we want discussion before I propose a motion? Let's discuss it. Yes. Andy?
So I've been generally in favor of this, but I think that the conversation tonight has convinced me that there's an opportunity to be slightly more surgical about what's being done. In terms of some of the parcels that maybe we could think about not building or not allowing for this variance on, I have far fewer misgivings about a bunch of 6-story buildings suddenly shooting up. That's just.
Oh.
Is this a motion thing? Do we have to move?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you weren't moving.
Was that a motion?
It must have been good. All the other lights were on.
Okay,
I mean, the
yes.
light on the east.
So I don't feel that this is gonna turn into 6-story buildings cropping up everywhere, although there's there's certainly valid concerns that even just a couple would impact the dynamic. But I think we could be more strategic and hit the key parcels if we hold this off for another 6 months and vote on it after some more consideration.
I'll just say in favor, I would just go a little bit further to say, with AstraZeneca having sat there for years, that other building closing, not having a tenant, I think, you can look at any zoning change and say, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? I just don't think it's realistic that those things will happen, but I definitely acknowledge that it's possible, so that, that we'd have 6-story buildings, across all.
On every parcel.
Right,
That's
so.
what we'd be allowing for.
Right, so, but I think that's not realistic.
Okay. Terry, and then Jim.
I'd agree if we can carve something out and take some time and see what, they aren't all equally distasteful, for lack of a better word.
Right.
So let's go through that and see. And then I'm not sure what the rules are about being able to show different parcels differently. But if we we've hit it in this direction, see what really bothers us about this, and see if we can indeed carve out a few parcels, one way or the other.
Jim?
I think-
And Jim, and then I'm gonna go Gary. Did you?
Yeah,
Jim
I
first go and then
just,
Gary? Yep.
I think we're only considering one side of the equation, not both sides. All right, we're looking at the revenue, potential revenue influx, but we're not looking at, the fire needs, the police needs, et cetera, et cetera. So
And quality of life needs on that side of town.
yeah, and for, just to be open with you, I live on High Street, okay? And it kind of, I think maybe if I'm up on the hill and I look down, I might be able to see a tall building.
And I live on Arch Street. Yeah, excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, and the only thing I can see is, even if we have, let's see, over by McDonald's is considered east, okay? I know that a lot of people come through Westborough to get these buildings. I'm sure it's gonna work the opposite way. And I don't know what that's gonna do to the rotary and everything else. I think there's just a lot that has to be considered.
Gary Wells.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on Terry's point, was that it may be difficult to surgically change this and say, we're gonna allow 6-story buildings on
4 parcels.
these particular parcels, and the other parcels are gonna be limited to 4. Based on what Jim said, is that you cannot zone abutting properties under the same auspices. In other words, we've already classified this as industrial commercial zoning area. So you can't take and say AstraZeneca's and say we're gonna zone that for 6, but the people across the street we're gonna leave zone for 4.
He
Be-
was not
because-
clear about that.
No, because you cannot improve, one person's, you can't approve one person's lot without applying the same rules to the abutters.
You know, I asked him what the minimum number of lots he could do and to avoid spot zoning, and he did not answer the question. I think he can minimize from this. I have a hunch he could minimize from this, but I understand the point you're
But it
making.
might be,
tricky.
it might be a trick, it might be a tricky thing to do. But then again, I go back to Jim and say, I think we can take a breather. I think at least we can, we should be, bring this back in March.
Yeah. After
Listen to
talking a
the
few
comments,
people.
listen to the comments of town meeting and what the town meeting residents have to say on this, and then potentially bring it back, go back, redesign it if you can, be selective if you can, and then bring it back again in March.
Yes, Andrew?
So I'm not sure that I have the same takeaway about how difficult it would be to be surgical, because there is a parcel right next to Columbia between, 2653-0 and 2659 that's not gonna be zoned for this. And I think that there's an area on the bottom right, which is not gonna be zoned for this.
And there's one to the left of 1824
Yeah.
there, that's not gonna be
And
zoned
in
like
fact,
that.
half of 1B, to the right of Fisher Street is gonna be done, but half to the left is not. So I'm sympathetic to the fact you cannot make this look like a mottled patchwork, because that really does look a little selective. But if you applied some overarching rules, like if you abut a residential area, maybe you couldn't fall under this, and that would carve out a couple of these places that I think would not be considered as discriminatory in terms of the way that the rules are being applied.
Okay, Sean, did you have anything?
Yeah, well, and I think I would just generally say that, so we can go 6 stories on the east side of town, and I guess we've had that for a while, and nothing's actually been developed over there. So, I think that, thinking this is all gonna go up soon, I imagine it's because of Astra,
Right.
and that there are
Somebody was
potential
interested in
opportunities
that.
that we are
Right.
missing out on, and so, do we do something there, and then,
And revisit the others, yeah.
yeah.
Is there anybody who supports this as is written in this, at this time?
Well, let me, because I think I've listened to all this, and I see a reasonableness to it. I don't want us to reject it out of hand, but nobody's saying that. They're saying modify and more time. And I think if we make that obvious, and it kind of runs into something that came up with the note at the beginning. I thought in the past, when we defeated an article, we made a point of pointing that out.
Which
and
we did in our last meeting.
But yes,
We made a
and we
motion to
didn't
defeat
in
an
the
article.
note, the draft note that I saw today.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, so I would say that should be, that one that we defeated, and then also this one, if we defeat it, but have that same explanation. I know that we're not all gonna agree on the exact words, but really to modify it. We're not against the idea, the concept, but maybe we're against the implementation that's here.
So do we want a motion like that?
May I make a
A motion like
suggestion?
that? Yep.
We have a motion on the table to approve the article. There's nothing that says we cannot all abstain. So we can have a 007 vote
Did we
on
make
this,
the motion to approve
We
this?
could have a
Yeah, the motion
wait a
was
minute,
to
let me finish.
approve.
We could have a
Okay.
007 vote on this article. And then, when the article comes up for a vote on town meeting floor, we can make the committee can make a statement of our concerns and why we decided not to vote either yay nor nay on the article, but to open it for town meeting discussion.
Can someone remind me who made the motion to approve this and who seconded it?
I moved it.
As written. All right.
So I'm not sure what's strategy is achieved in that versus voting that we refuse it, or I forget, reject it, vote to recommend that the town reject the article as written, and then in our notes, provide an accounting why we wouldn't. So, you know, you've been doing this longer than I have. What is the benefit of playing it via?
Well, just the reason. I mean, if we approve the article, then, you know, if we vote to approve the article, then, you know, people will take that, you know, that's exactly what we're doing, right? I mean, if we vote to defeat the article, then they're gonna take it, you know, that, you know, we specifically wanted to defeat the article, as we did the other night.
If I,
As we did the other night.
Yep.
If we choose to abstain from voting on the article, then, you know, I think that in its way sends its own message that we couldn't come to a consensus in our own deliberations in the time period that we had. And I think that's true. I mean, I think that there's still a lot of outstanding questions in people's minds. We don't have enough time to deliberate and to provide you know, or we can just leave it open. We can leave it 0-0. We can leave it 0-0-0 and just put the comment in that, you know, the finance committee will provide a recommendation at town meeting floor. At which time we could, you know, Jody can get up and make a statement as to, you know, why we decided not to vote for it, because there were overlapping concerns, not enough to defeat it, but not enough to accept it point blank either, you know?
So, for me, point taken. I mean, that's an interesting recommendation on how to vote. It is pretty clear to me that I could not vote for this zoning article as written. And if we want to do a you know, the parliamentary tricks for voting to oppose, voting to approve, or deciding to abstain, I won't abstain. I'll vote in the negative on this article as brought to town meeting this time, whichever way whichever way the motion is brought to the.
And as a point of procedure, if we voted on the current motion, which is to accept it, and if that passed, say 2-5, and I'm not trying to judge for anybody here, but if it passed 2-5, would we not make another motion to vote to defeat the article?
And explain why?
And explain why, and then it would pass conceivably 5-2.
Right.
You know.
Right. Change it, then we could change the motion from a, you know, recommend the town so vote.
So does every time, and Mr. Moderator, maybe you can help us, if every time the AFC votes to defeat an article, we change it around?
You don't have to. There's no requirement. Your only obligation is to make a recommendation. And if your recommendation is to say that the majority of the committee feels it's not ready now, but needs more work and come back, that's fine. I mean, what we used to do when I was on the committee is that we would decide, do we want to vote against it, or do we just want to make a statement? And I mean, you can do what Gary suggests, which is to essentially not publish a vote, essentially the 0-0-7, where it would be no vote, and then make a statement with your recommendation. Or you can say you'll make a recommendation at town meeting, and the recommendation can be that the committee was reluctant to say no because it just rather than being against it, it wants it to come back for more work. So I mean, there's really no strict format you have to have. I think the voters would just appreciate knowing what does the committee think.
In my mind, if we vote it to defeat it and offer the courtesy of bringing it back in a more nuanced form, we can communicate.
Yeah, I mean, a recommendation to defeat doesn't mean that you're against it for now and forever. It essentially means that if the majority of the committee is to recommend defeat, an explanation can either be made in the booklet and or orally to say that it's not that the committee holds the idea in prejudice, but really just thinks that there are some issues that should be given more thought and come back to the future town meeting. That's perfectly legitimate.
And things like in our discussion that a more nuanced proposal could have come forward that didn't have such broad impact, and that we're considering revenues without considering costs.
Yeah. Anything like that is legitimate.
So I'd just like to make the distinction that I'll change my vote to either not vote for it or to defeat it as long as we explain it
Okay,
in a nuanced fashion, just say that we're not against the concept. And if, since I seconded it, if I can withdraw my second, because it sounds like we should, I do like the idea of voting for something
in the affirmative.
in the, yeah,
In the affirmative.
even if it's a defeat.
So,
And then I would probably,
make a new motion. Would you withdraw to
No,
change that motion?
I'll amend my motion.
Okay.
And I will move that the committee recommended, move that the committee recommended the town vote to defeat this article.
Second.
Okay, all in,
One more second.
Yep.
I have one more comment. I'm gonna vote in the affirmative for this article. And I don't mind being the outstanding vote. For me, it's more of moving forward so we can get something done with that property, and then doing the traffic analysis and the impact studies when somebody comes in for that parcel, and then at that point determining if we need to do something else with the rest of this, reevaluate the rest of this piece. But I'm just afraid we're gonna make this motion and then, it's not gonna go anywhere.
okay, any more discussion before we vote?
I think that's an excellent point, and I would just say that as one of the people who is an author for the article to put up speed signs on a couple of streets, this town does traffic analysis, kicking and screaming, and then doesn't end up doing them in the end. So I think that's a valuable thing to be done, but it's a very hard thing to expect the town to do that. But I think it's the right thing to do.
All right, more discussion. And we're gonna vote, and then I wanna give you the language that we would wanna add. Okay, ready to vote? So the vote is to defeat Article 36 as written. The motion is to defeat Article 36 as written.
If you're gonna give
With a
language,
caveat.
can we get the language first?
With the caveat that the committee discerned, what's the best word?
Feels.
The committee feels the article as written has broader impact than necessary, introduces potential revenue opportunities, but does not analyze potential town costs.
I think a reference to the
Surgical nature?
yeah, the broad, geographically broad.
Why don't we just say that the committee feels there were a number of open issues that it felt required more investigation or more deliberation.
There were a number of open issues which required more investigation or deliberation, including the broadness of the zoning change, the lack of exploration of new costs to the community, which would be associated with the zoning change.
I don't think, the reason I would vote for it is that the possibility of changing the scope, geographical scope, the expenses are assumed,
Well, it's Mr. Driscoll brought that up
Right,
a
I know.
couple of times.
Okay. So I have to decide whether to vote for that.
With that caveat.
Yeah.
May I ask where in the document would that caveat go? Because there's
That
one
would-
place to do the message.
No, we'll probably not put it in the message, but we will put it with the article itself.
In the body.
Traditionally, we would edit that in to with our vote. And in other words, before the I'll have to pull it. I'd have to
So
pull
it would be
pull
right
up.
underneath
Yes,
our vote.
Yes,
It would be in italics right
right.
under
It
the
would be
vote.
right in conjunction with our vote, and that's what Article
So
36.
our sticking point, our sticking point here did you get the answer you needed, Andrew?
I did,
Where
yes,
it's gonna go? Is that subset language about why we're voting to defeat the article as written. And Mr. Keough wants it to be because it is unsuitably broad in its geographic scope.
That's me.
That's your point.
People, not Keough. That's It's okay, we don't have name tags.
You can tell I'm getting very tired. Sorry. I don't even remember what I said.
But yes, you got that right.
Yes, right. And, but you can't support the fact that we haven't analyzed town costs.
Yeah, it's not that I can't support it, but that's not the reason.
How many reasons do we need? If we can just say, there are a few
No, I think they should be
issues
spelled.
that, well, no, but
Because if it's too broad,
on the other
it sounds
hand,
like we're against it or
well, that's why,
something.
that's why I'm trying to get this right there, so it's absolutely clear that we're not voting to tank this thing.
But we
We're
won't.
holding off.
For additional information.
Yeah.
But you know, Paul, we did ask, I mean, the committee asked whether the space was overly broad and had an overly broad impact. The committee asked several times about associated costs with these kinds of zoning changes. And I mean, I'm gonna ask for the detailed analysis. If you don't wanna throw that in, you don't have to, but that's a value.
It doesn't matter what their response to those were, it's what we think of, this article.
Well, they're only concentrating on one side of the equation. And
But
that's-
they didn't give revenue numbers either, though. so
No,
we
I
don't
understand
really-
that,
yeah.
but.
He said it would possibly double the value
Oh, okay.
when it's
Sorry.
developed, when a parcel is developed. That's pretty vague.
And the other side as well, to me, is what's it gonna cost us?
But it's 500 new employees.
Yeah, I mean, if you used, the police chief said that there was 58,000 people that come through the town any one time, hotels and things like that, and there's only 20,000 residents. So
Those
they,
numbers are not,
well, I don't know, but I'm just saying.
So is that all wrapped up in the concept of the zoning change being overly geographically broad?
would you be against it if it was just a few parcels?
I would still be against because I don't have enough information to make a decision.
Okay, so it's not just the,
So the article, or the proposal on the table now is that the motions, that the committee votes to oppose the article as written, and we take a vote on that with an explanatory note. The committee felt the article, the zoning bylaw as drafted was overly geographically broad and needs more analysis. The zoning change needs more analysis and as written was overly broad.
that's good with me.
Then we might get unanimous opposition, I don't know. I care about what you care about, I just,
I'm gonna say it one more time, I just don't have enough information to make me
okay.
vote for this.
And did not have a full analysis of the impact of the zoning change. I mean, with that,
That's
we
good,
don't
yeah.
have a full
That's good.
analysis of the community impact of the zoning change.
Yeah.
Okay, you've had many versions there, Marwa, do you have one to work with?
Nor will we ever.
I can work with you on where we ended up, unless you want a clarification right now, Marwa.
I just don't want to go beyond that, to further
You figure it out.
editorialize, but
Okay,
I want it to be
yeah, okay.
specific.
Yeah,
Okay,
Not just to say we were against it, we don't say anything.
okay,
no,
all right,
But I
more
don't want to,
information.
I don't want to go further than that, I guess,
Okay.
in, the
Yep.
following days.
Okay. All right, given what we're gonna get as the caveat, all in favor of opposing the article as drafted? We got a 5, all who's, okay, all who
Opposed
don't support,
opposing?
all who don't support opposing the article as drafted, 1, and all who are abstaining, 1. 5, 1, 1. Which goes to the complexity of the analysis of this article. Okay, and Marwa, when the minutes come up, and it's going to be both minutes and language for Paula to get into the final one tomorrow. All right, there we go. We voted on the whole thing. We have saw today from Paula Favino, Administrative Assistant to the Town Manager, the near final draft of the R&R booklet. We're going to add in the Advisory Finance Committee message to voters, and I've got Andrew Bradley's final comments. I'll make some final structural changes.
Just sent in some comments.
Pardon? Beth also sent some?
Just
All
right now, yeah.
I'll go home and redo that and create a revision D. Plus Beth, yes, Andrew?
Yeah.
From the R&R booklet, also, it appears that the area on the top accurately captures our votes, but the area embedded within the actual articles does not, they seem to suggest we're all 900.
Yeah, those are only,
They're just
I
placeholders?
noticed that too. And those-
Okay.
And I think Paula just put them in there as placeholders.
Okay,
And I think, well, before we get too far off of that, I want to go back to the message.
Yep. Sorry.
I had forwarded over a couple suggestions on these and those.
Can you look at how I tried to work those
Yep.
in and tell me if I got it
Well,
correctly?
I got, I just printed, I printed it
Oh, you
out, I
printed it.
printed it out unless you got a,
No, the footer says revision C.
yeah, I didn't, this one didn't print out a footer. Yeah, I still think, Article 7, paragraph,
Yeah.
right? The final sentence where it says, the AFC supports these Articles 7 and 8. I mean, if you were to say, the AFC supports these articles without the numbers, then these would be an appropriate pronoun.
So this, you know what, this paragraph, and I worked with yours, Gary, anyway, and it starts out talking about Article 7 and to add to the police department's personnel, and then the final sentence talks about Articles 7 and 8.
Well, I originally had the title on it that it was just police department reinforcement or something like that. And, you know, it's gotten edited, you know, I mean.
Well, when you said drop the highlighted text, I dropped everything up to the colon. I didn't know what you meant by dropping the highlighted text.
Oh, okay, so you misunderstood my highlighted text.
Yes, that's what I did. Yes, I did.
Okay, all right, my mistake, I should have said, it was just the way that last sentence read. You know, it says Article 7, adds to the police department, but then the final line, it says, the AFC supports these Articles 7 and 8 and recommends, and I just think that should read like, the AFC supports Articles
Yep,
7 and 8.
I agree.
Right, I mean, just from a conjunction,
Yep,
standpoint, grammatical thing.
Yep.
And the same thing is true in the last sentence of the next paragraph. The AFC supports these three Articles,
Yep.
30, 31. It should just probably read, the AFC supports
articles.
30, 31, and 32.
Got it.
And get rid of these three.
And add back in your paragraph headers.
If you want, it does, I mean, it doesn't really, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have the article headers in there, but if you want to, I have no objection to that, but.
So and I think I told you, when I went to edit this, I noticed we called out fire, we called out police, we called out water and sewer, among all the other things we voted on. And I'm guessing that those are some of the strategic shifts that we are paying attention to right now, so they were worth calling out individually. I mean, we did a lot more than those three. Everybody comfortable that those are the ones we highlight this time?
Well, the only,
Yep.
I did look at a past thing, and they did have the dissenting type votes in that message up front, but it's fine, I guess, either way, whether it's there or with the, you know, with the article itself. I don't think it matters to me, but I did notice that.
I think rather than call out the dissenting votes, would like to not emphasize that.
That's up
I
front.
just, yeah, I mean, I didn't say anything about the schools finishing under budget and therefore able to shift some of the project savings over to defray costs on another. I didn't go into that kind of detail. Crossed my mind, but we'd be spilling onto a second page and I didn't want to do it. Yes?
And I would add that the two that were defeated, neither of them were cash articles, you know, so it was more in a charter amendment and then the zoning
Plan.
board, so.
Okay. All right, I have Gary's, I have Andrew's, and you think Beth has more changes than what I already had?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll look at Gary and Beth and Andrew and do a final revision and get it over to Paula by morning. And along with our votes, along with the caveat on that, you can help me with the caveat on that vote. Then we're ready to get this to Paula to send to Curry for a proof copy to get back on Thursday.
Paula, and then Paula will send us a PDF.
Paula was a little, when I stopped by to see Paula today, She was a little confused on who was doing what.
Okay, so who is doing what?
Well, that's what it is. I couldn't tell her. I couldn't tell her who was doing what, but
Okay.
she was a little confused as to who was gonna edit the document.
Well, I have to edit the document on, before she sends it or after she sends it?
Well, you know, who's gonna, you know, like, who's going to edit the document, like inserting, I mean, we have Rev 3, I believe, if my memory serves me well, the one that got sent out today from Paula, her assembled version was Rev 3. Didn't have the voters, message to the voters in it, and it didn't have, as Paul pointed out, didn't have the correct votes on the individual articles. They were all like placeholders.
We got this today
I didn't get that. I didn't get the attachment.
from Paula. Okay.
So,
But I'm sorry, but from my understanding from her email was that the only placeholders she had was Articles 10 and 36.
But what we're hearing now is that the votes haven't been reread either.
Yeah.
I'll get it
right,
to you, Marwa.
because she did incorporate the index that I sent over, which had the I had updated all the vote totals on to date. I went through that and updated that and sent it over to her with the two highlighted that we hadn't voted on yet. And so she was aware of that, but and I didn't get a chance to go through it article by article, but on each one of the articles there's a vote
And that-
placeholder.
Okay.
And we need to somebody needs to go through and double check to make sure that those are,
Okay, how many people want to do a proof of this? Marwa, myself,
Oh,
by tomorrow, and I want to have the language to Paula to do whatever needs to be done by noon tomorrow. So who can, I mean, I'm on board, you're on board, will you
Sure, I'll take it.
scrub the document? Yeah, okay, so the three of us will do that, and we get it to Paula by noon tomorrow to make final changes and create a PDF. Who sends it to Curry?
Well, usually the PDF is sent to me.
Okay, and then Mara.
Because I've never done that part.
Okay.
Previous part you're talking about. And then I just send it to Curry because I'm
Okay.
corresponding with them
Okay,
regarding that.
All
And then
right.
I usually just ask them to
okay,
send them to the high school.
okay. Okay, Jody, Sean, and Marwa are going to proof. And then get to Paula the copy by noon tomorrow. Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Don't we usually make some sweeping comment about the effect, the big picture effect on is it the tax rate, or is it because this isn't the town meeting, it's a special town meeting?
Well, actually, I asked Gary if he wanted to talk about that, and that I wanted for our benefit to talk about that.
Still to come.
Now, where are we? We're at 9 o'clock. Do you want to talk about it now? Here, this is,
Yeah.
does everybody have this worksheet on the financial revenue and expenditure estimated for 2019?
I guess also whether that
We need to
affects the
comment.
comments, yeah.
Well, let's talk about it first and then decide whether it belongs in our comments. So, Gary, you gave me a heads up on some of the, you and Hank have both mentioned a 7.5% increase in the tax bill for residents. Is that accurate?
well, the tax bill is actually going up by 8.91. The estimated tax bill is gonna go up by 8.91%.
So tell me exactly what that means. The bill that they got, that we got when?
Relative to last year, relative to your last year's tax bill,
Yep,
total,
yep.
next year's tax bills, or actually, I shouldn't say that. Let me back up. Relative to last year's tax bills, okay, the tax total on your property, this year's, because we are in FY19, and this is a closure on FY19's budget, all right, because these numbers that are represented in the revenue and expense report estimate are the numbers that will most likely be submitted to the DOR, Department of Revenue, on December, around the 1st of December, to establish the tax rate for FY19, which is the year we are currently in. Okay? So you've already made so your total payment, which you've already made 2 payments, you've already made a first quarter and the second quarter payment's coming up in November, excuse me, at a particular rate. But once the tax rate gets established, then the new tax rate will show up on your bills
For the third quarter?
third and fourth quarter, okay? And the total of all of those, in comparison to the total of last year, there will be an increase of 8.91%.
So, but that's not an annualized increase of 8.9.
No, that's a year over year. That's in comparison to last year's total and what we're expecting this year's total to be. Okay? And that's basically, basically it boils down to revenue and expenses. We spent more money than the revenues that we took in. It increased our tax levy, and we didn't have the matching increases in our revenues to match the increase in our spending, because we also took nearly $2 million off of our excess levy capacity. Last year, our excess levy capacity was near $12 million, and this year it's a little bit over $10 million, which, if we were doing a flat growth, in other words, our expenses were going up equal to what our revenues were going up, there would be no change in the tax levy, or very little. Obviously there would be, but it would basically stay the same, because we weren't outspending our revenue growth, but we are. And that's why our taxes are going up.
Okay, Jim, yep.
Yeah, but another point in there is that the assessed values haven't grown as much as the overall tax increases. And that's part of revenue.
Well, John alluded to that also, in that we're kind of in this little 3-year cycle period where for a couple of years the assessed values, particularly on residential, don't seem to change very much. They might go up a couple of percentage points year over year, and then all of a sudden we have a reevaluation where you heard him say that he goes back and builds up from the ground back up again.
So you know what, I see that we've gone from a $482,000 average home value to a $518,000 home value. So we're not talking about the percentage of increase of value in our homes, which would be an interesting number for the people to realize. Some of the spending we're doing that's causing an increase in the taxes is also causing an increase in the value of your home by $30,000 or more. That goes straight to your bottom line. It's just another data point.
Yep.
Well, that's also, if you go year to year, and the valuation is affected by inventory in, inventory out. So if you're building high-end, you're going up further than if you're building affordable housing. And it's just part of it. But just be careful about attributing too much.
Right, plus general market conditions outside the local. It's going up everywhere.
Sure, but all I'm saying is if your home is worth $30,000 more this year than it was 3 years ago, that's a data point. That goes right to your own that goes in your personal pocket or onto your own balance sheet.
Yeah, it's somewhat speculative though, because when you go to sell, that may or may not still be the case. It's on paper.
No, but my neighbors are selling for
Right, it's still on
quite a
paper though
lot
for you
over
individually.
appraised values.
But it wasn't because of things, only because of things the town did,
It's
because
the
every
market
town around
conditions.
us has
It's the
gone.
market
right.
conditions. Okay,
But
yep, I hear you.
the total tax you owe is independent from, assuming everybody's assessed value went up, rose at the same level, the two are independent. The fact that the assessments went up didn't mean you paid more taxes.
Didn't have to mean that.
Right. That's why you see the rate drop from 1930 to 1836.
I guess, so if none of these warrants pass, that's the adjustments column, right? So it would have been 6.72% increase.
So did this
Now it's
town
gonna be 8.91.
Right, did this fall town meeting change what would have been a 6.72% increase in the average tax bill to an 8.91%?
Correct.
Because of this spending in this fall town meeting?
Correct.
Which was this, what'd you say, $10,365? No, where is your total spending here?
3,170,000 in the adjustments column.
So I think that's kind of important to lead with, because someone knowing that in advance might say, hey, all these things are great, but overall, that's killing me. And I don't know if I want to vote for all this stuff.
Because it was a 2-ish% increase in your tax bill. No, well, it increased your tax bill by 2 more percent, right?
Yeah, about a little bit over 2% now. Added another 2%. But that can also, I mean, that ties into the overall town assessment and relative to the tax levy and how that plays out to generate the mill value rate, and as a multiplier against the single family average home, right? And everybody's taxes are not going to go up by $778 because everybody doesn't live in the $518,000 home. Somebody that lives in a $250,000 home, assessed value, their taxes are only going to go up $380. $80.
So the average
Right.
house, but this says the estimated average house tax bill adjustment is $191.88. So what we're spending at this town meeting
Yep,
per person on average is $191.88.
correct. The effect of adding more fire personnel, the effect of adding more police.
Borrowing to fix the infrastructure on the water plant?
No.
No?
No, the
That
water,
doesn't hit the
anything on the water, any borrowing on the water and sewer, affects the water and sewer rates only and not this bill.
But the fixing of the station, the 6.4 million.
No?
No, all inside of the water and sewer enterprise and would directly be reflected in your water and sewer bill.
So Gary,
And not in your, i.e. property taxes.
So I tried to figure out which ones, then, I mean, the simplest question is which of these warrant articles go to that $191.88? It's all the raise and appropriates?
Right,
it's
pretty
not
much
the-
everything that's listed as a raise and appropriate.
But it's not a free cash, it's not the free cash.
Free cash doesn't raise your tax
Just
rate.
the raise and appropriates pretty much is it. The raise and appropriates at this town meeting are gonna cost $191.88 in total.
Right,
Not the transfers, not the free cashes, and not the borrows.
right.
And
The
that-
raise and appropriates.
And that's really just 400 grand.
Yeah, an increase of tax levy. Remember that, basically, for every $100,000 in increase of tax levy relates to about $13 on everybody's tax bill.
So I only see 1, 2, 3.
The rest of it falls out because of the relationship of total town evaluation tax levy, which develops the mill rate to assessed value. So if your assessed value goes up, your taxes are gonna go up. Right?
So that's
If your, as Jody pointed out, if your property is worth $30,000 more, then you're paying taxes on $30,000 more.
So the bump in costs, the 480 to 518, that's about a 7.3% increase. That 7.3% increase does feed into that
Yes.
$191.
Yeah.
So now, when seeing that, the percentage means less to me than that. Like, I feel like going in, I'm voting on things that add up to, at the maximum, if all went through, I think, $192.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I can kind of then judge each one proportionately to that
Interesting.
as I go along.
But it's only, if we say it's only the raise and appropriates, I'm looking back at this, then it's only the,
Yeah, but it's not, I mean, Jody, that's only one component to
Yep.
it. That, you know, that's one, what we
Yep.
vote on as a raise and appropriate goes pretty much right to the bottom line
yep,
on your taxes.
yep,
But as you can see, there's also, there's also an adjustment in,
house values.
house values, right?
So that leads to an
changed.
that leads to an adjustment in the
And
tax bill?
that leads to an adjustment in the tax bill also.
So then those two.
Because,
data points are
it
very-
depends on the ratio, it also depends on a ratio of commercial,
Right.
industrial commercial to residential,
Yep,
okay? And, if we were, which doesn't really show in the estimated total town
Right.
valuation.
so that's really important, that
There
on
is-
this little chart, we're not showing the residential commercial impact.
Right, no, we don't show the individual breakdown that says, 35% of the town is commercial industrial,
Yeah,
and the other 65% is residential. So when there's a increase in the tax levy, 65% of it falls to the residential side, while 35% of it falls to the commercial side, right?
okay.
To make up that mix, right? That's why I brought up that point tonight about the dual rates.
Yeah, I'm with you.
In the dual rates of, commercial, industrial, and residential. That we have a population of 19,000 people in town that are served, that are served, proportionally by the police, the fire department, the DPW, and the school systems, right? While the commercial side is serviced by the police, the fire department, the DPW, but they don't necessarily put a burden on the school system because they're not putting kids in school.
They put a burden elsewhere.
But their burden falls otherwise, along with the transients that
Their
come into.
customers and their
The
employees.
transients that come into town every day too. That, the employees that come into town, the businessmen that come into town, they all put a burden on the services that the town provides. And, that's specifically why, we got the request from the fire department, why we got the request from the police department, is that, those burdens are, outweighing what the residents are actually putting on those departments.
So that's a big change in thinking for the town. This is a lot of complexity, Paul. So in your suggestion is that we try to make some kind of comment on this sheet? How do you wrap that up? That's an incredible amount of, there's a lot of financial modeling.
You could write a whole book
on the moving parts.
this
the
one,
moving parts
on
and
this
pieces.
one, on the moving parts of this one sheet.
And the $191 that this town meeting has cost is maybe the clearest number I've heard here.
Yeah, if you disregard the effects of borrowing and using up retained earnings that are ours to start with type of thing, but, you know, I think for me, so I think, I don't know, so that would be my reference, but I don't know if because it's much more complicated than that, if that's the one thing to be singling out.
I think we should think of a committee, you know, Gary, you are demonstrating how incredibly complex it is. I would be interested as a committee to try and tease out the complexity into helpful data points for the community to consider, including your increased residential value, how that impacts your increased tax bill, how the how a mill levy works. How commercial is contributing, how residents are contributing. There's some basic concepts there that I'd be really interested in learning how to share better with the community.
I'd still love to, there's not enough time or anything else, but all things being equal, because some of those things are gonna move the same way, whatever people vote. But I'd like to know when I'm voting on the police or the fire, that's gonna cost me, if I'm an average, nobody's the average.
$20.
That $20. Yeah, and then I'd like to say, oh, okay, $20, that's nothing to have that. But, or maybe that's just a little too much for, you know, whatever, some other article, but it's more complicated.
Yeah, you have to remember the only ones who are going to be there are the taxpayers. Okay, not the other users of the service. You know, we have the businesses in town. I went back and I took a real quick look at the assessed values for last year, and residential is 68%, which means everything else is commercial, industrial, what they consider personal property. Now, don't ask me what's in those classifications, okay? But 68% was residential.
And we have the sixth largest.
65, 35.
We have the sixth largest commercial industrial contribution to the bottom line of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts.
Really?
Yes,
Sixth largest commercial, does that mean
contribution.
our commercial?
Well, I knew that, that's what I was told several years ago, so I don't know if our 60-30 was a 70, you know, a 70-30 was a 60-40 before, but when I was looking, we have more commercial contribution than the average city and town.
I guess I would go along with Paul and say, I think the dynamics of the town have changed, and that with the police and the fire and the requirements on them, I would point out those attributes as the $191 per whatever it was.
So we call those out
Call those out. and
already,
I think-
so just add the numbers.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do, but
So add the numbers, which numbers? So yes.
the police, the fire, what was the other, was there another one?
So do we want to mention which serve a community of 20,000 residents and X many
I would say
transients each
just
day?
changing the dynamics of the community. That's what it is. I
Well,
mean, if we're
it's
gonna
not
go
a
from-
change in the dynamics, we are recognizing the dynamic in the community. It's not a change. I mean, this is the first time I was told the burden, began to explore the burden placed on our police and fire by non-residents who use and move in the community every day. Is that the dynamic that you're talking about changing?
Right, I think that we're beginning to recognize it. I think we're beginning to recognize it. I don't think we've taken it into consideration before. That's my opinion.
Do you want that in a message from the AFC? Okay. All right, I'm not. All right, so this is interesting. I don't know if we want to do anything. I mean, this is
No,
an
I-
important
no.
discussion. I don't know if we want to do anything about it in the moment.
I think the barometer, like $100,000 approved, will equate to $13 in your tax bill. I think that's the kind of useful information.
Yeah.
But I
Is
think
it
we should
true?
address it.
Is it true? It's not true if it's free cash. It's not true if it's
Well,
a borrow. It's not true.
No. I mean, an RNA, whatever the RNA is, right?
Raise and appropriate.
Raise an appropriate portion will add, well, it actually works out to be $12.56.
I think you're reinforcing what I'm trying to get at, which is to say that barometers like that are helpful to have, but they're not the helpful thing to add at 9 o'clock the day before the book is due. This is something we should think about how we represent this, and that's something I've been lobbying for.
Yeah, I know it's coming. I know,
Yeah.
I've been hearing. And it's.
So,
And it's
and so
happening.
I'm
Yeah.
with you entirely, but.
Okay, So let's just use this new collective intelligence to shape our work as we move forward. Yeah?
Yeah, I think we should be ready to comment, because someone might get up on the floor and pose some of these things that those things you just talked about could be.
Because this is in the book, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so someone
Okay.
would be able to talk
Okay.
to speak to that.
Are you satisfied with that, Mr. Wells?
Oh, I'm always satisfied. I can speak on this topic for 2 hours, but for town meeting, well, please don't. John would probably not allow me to speak on that position for 2 hours. He'd call a quick halt to that one, I'm sure.
All right, I'm moving on. I've got you here until 9:20. It's later than I like to go. Future draft agendas. We had an invitation for November 5th. Do we need to meet on Thursday? Are we good to go?
Well, we've done all our votes.
We've done our
So
votes.
we've done all
assigned
the votes,
proofing
so
and the
they
production.
can be in the book.
So there's no more
It's gonna
work on
be on the way.
Thursday. Is there?
Not
us?
really, no, we don't have any really outstanding issues.
Does anybody want it? Anybody dying to get together on
I
Thursday
won't
night?
make it either way, so that's,
I can't think of more work we have to do.
No.
Okay,
The work is tonight.
this was the work, and then, well, a few of us have to
Not
proof.
working tonight.
A few of us have to proof and make sure that this gets delivered. So we have to finish the proofing and get with Paula by noon tomorrow. All right, so we're gonna cancel the meeting on Thursday, October 11th. And then we're all gonna be at town
Second.
meeting on Monday.
How soon do we have to give notice to cancel that? Because it's only 2 days.
Oh,
Do
you
we have
can
to-
cancel like that.
You
Yeah.
can cancel
Yeah, you
quickly?
can't-
Okay.
Because I've already,
You have to post it 48 hours in advance, but you can,
So can you take
you
care
can
of the
cancel it,
cancellation?
you can cancel it.
email the town clerk.
Okay, so you'll email the town clerk that we're canceling that. And then great suggestion that we bring the assessor back on the 5th, and
Have you
ask
posted a
hard
meeting for
questions.
Monday?
Pardon?
Have you posted your meeting for the town meeting?
I have it.
You going to that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Anything else we need?
Did you make a motion on approving the booklet with?
No,
With,
no, we didn't.
with any editorial changes?
Okay,
Okay. gotta make
who
sure
can
you-
make that motion?
You got the wording today, Karen?
I forgot it tonight, John, but I'll see if I can remember
Just
it.
do it close enough.
I move that we accept the edits, modifications, and alterations of the AFC's reports and recommendations book as discussed tonight, with the exception being that any last minute edits that do not significantly change the results as presented and discussed may be made by the chairman, vice chair, or designated editing person for editing grammatical errors.
Can you say that again?
I forgot, I have this all written down someplace.
I should have brought my card with me.
Yeah, well, I was just,
It's filed away home.
So we have a second over here, Terry.
But that's close
All in
enough.
favor? All right.
Go for my own
That's a
motion.
7, that's a 7 0.
I went out of the house, Sean, and I forgot.
If there are specific articles that you know you want to orally address the town meeting, could you let me know, because I'll make a note in my booklet so I don't forget? Or if you realize you haven't told me, or if I seem to forget, just holler at me
Okay.
and do that.
So we
Yep.
have revising copy that Paula sent out. I don't know if I have it now.
I forwarded it, but I also
Okay,
printed,
I
I
will check.
forwarded it.
Okay.
I forwarded
Must
it
have
later
that.
this afternoon.
All right.
I don't know why they
You
did
didn't
the
get it?
attachment.
The R&R, you didn't get the R&R?
I
I'll make
usually
sure you
print-
both have it.
I
Okay.
should print everything out.
All
I
right,
sent it 6:09.
609.
6:09 PM tonight.
That was your near final email?
Yeah, did I do the 12?
6:09, and it looks like it's everybody.
Okay.
Looks like the normal list.
Okay.
No, I got mine.
6:09 PM.
Thank you.
And I think Marwa, let's get together after the meeting, make sure. All right, any liaison reports, comments, or concerns? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Okay, thank you very much. And we'll see you, I guess, see everybody Monday night. Do we get there around 6:30-ish? 6:45-ish? 6:30?
Fighting lights traffic.
Okay.